7th, 2024. We're having a beautiful day here in North Alabama. We're in the mid 80s and very low humidity, which is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I got out and did my walk today earlier, and it was just great. It's really, I love these kind of late spring, early into summer days. I'll just chit chat for a minute or two as we let people come on. I started a new quilt project this week. The starting part is always the fun part when you get in the middle of something, and when you're close to the end, as I am with this, our block of the month, the pick a petal. Mine is very close to finished. I do now have all the embroidery to do, and I still have a few more of the little outer fan blocks to do, but it won't take me too long, and I can have this one completely finished. So I was ready to start a new one. And in the upper, I'm always backwards here, those blocks up there are the ones that I started this week. And the quilt pattern is called Oh My Stars. It's a picture that I had saved on Pinterest. And when I went the other day and started looking at a new quilt project to come up with, you can see there's a bunch of those Lone Star blocks, those little Lone Star blocks they're called, or Star Bethlehem blocks. They're 16 inches. And there are, I want to say 13 whole ones and 8 half ones and 4 quarter ones for the corners. So I did get started making those. And I got 2 of those finished, and I cut out another one today. My blog this Sunday, I will do pictures about it and write about it on the blog. I've been looking for another quilt class to offer that's more complicated, that takes more time. I do love teaching at Empty Spool seminars, and that one's a 5-day with one set of students. And so that 5 days in a row. So that just needs a different kind of a class than a class that you're going to teach in 1 6-hour time, and that's it. So it needs to be something that takes some time, but it can't be so hard that nobody wants to do it. So I got this pattern, and I checked with the company to see if they were okay with me doing that, and they were very much in favor of that. So I did get the pattern, and I got started on it. And my first block turned out okay, but not great. So I was being much more careful on the second block. One of the things, I teach piecing classes almost exclusively, and one of the things I say a lot is there's really only 3 things we can do wrong in the piecing of a quilt block. That is the cutting, the sewing, and or the pressing. And so this is one of those quilts blocks that really requires your best effort on all 3 of those areas. Those strips that we're going to make those stars out of, they are cut kind of an odd size. 1 5/8 inches is the strip size. And so they have to be accurate. And once you get them cut accurate, then you have to sew them exactly accurately so that the next step will fit. And finally, the pressing, you don't want to press in pleats. You don't want to stretch it or distort it when you're pressing it. So when I made my second block, I paid very close attention to each of those 3 steps. I take a lot of notes when I'm preparing a new class, because I often do a handout to supplement the instructions, and this pattern will be the same. For example, there's no pressing instructions in this, and I like to think ahead of where do I want to press and what comes next and which is the most reasonable way to press something. So I take all those kind of notes and do all of that. And so I'm happy to say that my second block was much better than my first block. So I'm just curious as to whether a complicated quilt like this is something that would interest you, or if you just would rather do things that are super simple in a class setting. Now, most of you who are working on this pick a petal, obviously you're willing to be challenged, because there are some challenges to this one. So anyway, my block on Sunday, this coming Sunday, the 9th of June, will be about my getting started on this Oh My Stars quilt. I have to write that blog this afternoon. And some of the shapes are simple and some are not so simple. So I want to switch to the document camera, and we'll look at some of the simple blocks. Now here is, I was asked earlier this week if I would talk about the more complicated shapes, and I said sure that I would. This block is quite simple. That's a square, and we had one in month 5, and I showed how I did it in month 5. I actually just prepped it and turned it under completely. The edges I like turned edge applique when I can do it that way. And then I machine appliqued this in place. I machine appliqued all of my stems, and I wrote in detail on my month 5 blog about how I did my stems and the stitching that I used. I used a blanket stitch for that. But this little leaf shape I actually did by needle turn applique. It's a simple little one. It's a shape. I do like hand needle turn applique. So I did the stem and the square by machine, and I did the little leaf by hand applique. And it worked out just fine. Find it here to show you. Here's this one. Okay. So there's the square in place and the stem, and then the little leaf, and I did that by hand applique. On this one, I did the stems by machine, but I did the 2 hearts and the 3 little diamond shapes all by needle turn applique. So the one that's a little more complex this month is this snowdrop. Jen calls this the snowdrops block. And it involves 3 little snowdrop flower shapes and 3 small teardrop sort of shapes. And when the person asked me if I would talk about more complicated shapes, I'm suspecting that these were the shapes she was talking about for needle turn applique. I would find these very difficult to do by needle turn applique because there's this in particular, the small one is very, very tiny. These points are very sharp on the ends. And so it was just going to be more difficult than I wanted to put into it for needle turn applique. So what I decided to do with that is raw edge machine applique. So I will talk about that briefly. So what I did for those little shapes is I have tons of this print and piece fused light. This is what the package looks like. Okay, print and piece fused light. It's a Quilter Select product. It's sold in the store at the Quilt Shop, the Quilt Show's store, and it has fusible on the back. It is a fibrous paper that you can run through a printer if you were needed to. And for some of our blocks of the month for previous years, that was the way that I did them. But it's a good little product, and most of it will wash out. It leaves no real stickiness or no real thickness to it or anything like that. So I have just bunches of this stuff left over. So what I did for these shapes, these oddball little shapes here, is I can see through it. So I laid the paper on top and with a pencil traced around it. And here's the small one right here that I've got on here that's traced. It might be hard for you to see because I used a pencil. Now here's the problem. This is the matte side, the non-fusible side. This is the fusible side. When you cut this shape out and fuse it to the wrong side of the fabric, you are creating a reverse mirror image. And that simply means that these 3 little leaf shapes will be reversed. Well, to me, it's not really a problem. They're simple enough that that I just don't have to really worry about it. It doesn't matter to me that they're turned around. So I didn't give that much thought. And this would be one that I drew on the paper side. So you can see here, when I flip this over, once it's cut out, when I flip it over, it's just going to be that the other side is in there. So I didn't worry about that. When you're making these for raw edge applique, trace them on your print and piece fused light, and you could even use freezer paper. The problem with freezer paper is you need to remove it. The great thing about this product is it will wash out. You don't have to remove it. So once you've got this traced around, I left a little extra space around it just to give myself some room. And then using good quality scissors, you just cut right out on the line. It's just that will give you the sharpest edge possible. Okay. Now, if these really tight little points bother you, you can simply make it a little bit larger, a little bit more roundy. Just cut it around and give it a little bit more of a shape that you might prefer to work with. My friend from the late wonderful Sue Garman, quilt designer extraordinaire and wonderful quilter, she told me that I could do that. And I said, but Sue, isn't that cheating? And she said, no, it's your quilt, you decide, which is a phrase you've heard me use many times. So you can see here when I turn this over, it is reversed. The wider part is now up here and the narrower part is down here. But in the grand scheme of things, when you look at how tiny these pieces are and where they go on the block, it hardly matters. Okay, this one you can't even tell which is the sharper of the two. Where'd that little guy go? He's so tiny. Here he is. Okay, let's see if we could even see what it would look like here if I turned him around. No, I mean, essentially the same. It just isn't anything that you need to worry about. But so what I decided to do with these is, as I said, is machine applique. So I used a lightweight thread, and my hand applique, I do almost all of my hand applique with this Quilter Select 80 weight pre-wound bobbins. Every color I could possibly need is in here. And so this is what I use for hand applique. And I'm going to show you in just a minute a little trick with a knot. With these fine threads like this, which is an 80 weight, silk, which I do like to hand applique with silk. I bought a lot of silk threads years ago when I first started doing hand applique. It's expensive stuff, but it's beautiful. They're slippery threads, so they come out of the needle very quickly when you're trying to hand applique, which is very frustrating. So I'm going to show you a little trick with that in a minute. But let's continue on talking about raw edge machine applique. So these little guys were prepped the same way that I just did this one. All I did to secure them to the background is use a couple of dots of Roxanne's glue based it, little tiny dots. And I've shown before a little amount of dot, a tiny little dot of glue, maybe no bigger than that kind of a little dot. And it's probably hard for you to see that. Little dot, you don't want a whole lot. And I just placed it on the background, finger pressed it in place. And once I had the three of them placed by finger pressing, then I used a hot iron to finish setting the glue just long enough. Little dots of glue, you don't want a lot of glue. And then I looked at my various stitches that I could consider to use from my sewing machine. And so I played around with a few other stitches here just to come up with some ideas. And these, I just pulled this fabric out of my little trash can. So one of the options for raw edge that would provide the most coverage is satin stitch. And so I'll just have these side by side so you can see. A satin stitch is just very close. They're back and forth stitches that would cover both the raw edge of the applique piece and into the background there. And so this one I started with, and this is very nicely done on this one. You may, when these are small like this, little pieces, tiny little scraps, it's very hard to get it really secure. On a larger piece, I didn't really need stabilizer behind it, but if you find that it's slipping and you think you should have some stabilizer, the first thing you might try is simply letting up on the pressure on your presser foot. There's an adjustment for most machines where you can adjust the pressure, the amount of pressure, how hard the foot sits on the machine, on the fabric. So you could raise that a little bit and try that and see what you think. I didn't have any trouble stitching this one like this. And I actually have white thread in the back and this purple on the top. So when I switched over here to show you what it would look like on the color that I'm using for mine, just so that you could see it on camera. I knew I was going to use a very light fabric, and I could have used a blue, an aqua color, and you wouldn't have seen it at all. But I started with that same size that this one is here, and then I said, when I made this little turn, I said, well, let me try and see if I like it even narrower. So just play with it on your machine and find the one that you like. When you find the one that you like, write it down, the width and the length. I've got mine written down, what I use. The stitch for me, the satin stitch was, I'll have to pull my notes out here. The satin stitch is stitch 1354, and it was 2.0 wide, but only 0.3 long. They're very close together, obviously. And so that's one. I do like a blanket stitch, and I use that for, blanket stitch is what I use for all of the rest of this. The stems, everything. And I wrote about that in my month 5 blog, exactly what my settings were for that one. The blanket stitch is for me on my machine is 1329 is the stitch number. And so here's one, and I made a little narrower. And I also then tried a zigzag. What about just a simple little zigzag? With raw edge, you want to try to cover the edge with as much coverage of thread as you can get. So I decided that I was just going to stick with, when I switched from my practice pieces to the real thing, that I was just simply going to use that blanket stitch and stitch very, very close to the edge and very, very accurately as much as I can. The foot that really helps for me on this one is on Bernina. It's an open toe embroidery foot. It's stitch number 20. This one's a 20D because I have the dual feed feature on my sewing machine. Besides the fact that the toe is open and you have good visibility, you want to move the needle to the far right. It's called right justified. I move it all the way, as many clicks over as it takes to get to the far right. And that allows for me to sew so that I'm going to stitch, the needle's going to be right here, not in the center. And I can absolutely see I use the edge of this toe as a guide so that I've got that going onto the background and directly into the applique. And then it comes forward just a little bit, and again, and stitch, stitch, stitch. It's not how fast can you sew this. This is not a fast process. It's how accurately. You want to go slowly, and when you need to turn a corner, you want to have the needle in the outside position with the needle down when you lift up the foot so that you can move the piece just a little bit. This is with the satin stitch, but the same is true of blanket stitch, and I use the blanket stitch on this one, the same thing. I have the needle far right, and I move this over. Alex has a wonderful video, which is why I'm not going to even try to show you a video. Hers are far better than mine. She's got John over there to help her get her videos just right, and I don't have good camera angles at my sewing machine. But it's in her Neutral Blooms class, and it was session 5 of that, and I will show you that in a few minutes when we switch to, and I show you my screen. So there's lots of different ways, and there are many more stitches. I have hundreds more stitches. And so look around your machine. We all have these wonderful machines that have lots of stitches, and we use 2 of them. So you might look and see if there are other stitches that you particularly like that would do a nice job. Again, these are so small and tiny. And then next month, when we start the embroidery, you're going to get instructions next month that show embroidery use and this connecting this snowdrop here with the petals, and I can see I have my snowdrops on upside down. Well, isn't that interesting? No, that one's right. No, they're not. They're not upside down. Okay, fine, no problem. But the stem here that joins this petal down here is going to be embroidery stitches, and so we're going to have all that next month. So that's what's coming with the embroidery that gets started next month. So that's what I did for machine applique. Again, with thread that closely matches your fabric applique, this little aqua fabric thread right here, you wouldn't see it at all. You'd have to get your nose right up to it to really see it. So that's a good, if you really don't want your stitches to show, match the thread as closely as possible. Okay, the other thing I wanted to show you, well, while this is here, I'll just lay it out again, and just we've had this apple before. I did the stem by machine, but the apple I did by hand. I did the stem by hand. I did these little shapes by hand, but and the things I did by hand. This one I did by machine. This one, I had that oval just like a circle, and I tugged it up and made it tight, and then I machine appliqued it. I machine appliqued this, and I machine appliqued both of the stems. So you can combine all of the different techniques and use this as a chance to learn. Unfortunately for me, the last block applique that I have to do is this additional little flower, and I have to wait until I join this border to the next border on the quilt, because these shapes are going to go around the curve here. I didn't do myself any favors by deciding that I was not going to assemble it the way Jen's instructions said, and I was going to do the 2 sides first as 4 blocks and the top and bottom as 6s. That was a mistake, and oh well, I'll know better next time. So, but this is my top row for this one. So, everything is done other than this last one, and it can't be done until I add the whole thing to the quilt. Okay, what I want to try to show you here is that fun little knot, and on how to attach a fine thread to needles. For hand applique, my preference for needles is short needles. These are betweens. This is a size 10 between, Peacemaker's brand. I learned from Mary Sorensen many years ago, who was a wonderful hand appliquer, and she said, use the needle that you're comfortable with. If you're a hand quilter, as I do, and for years I did a lot more hand quilting than I do today, but that's the needle my hand understood. It's short. I have big hands, and I have strong hands, and I tend to bend needles just almost by looking at them. So for me, a long, fine applique needle, a Milner, something like that, I'm bending it right off the bat. And I know that Jen has bent needles and she's perfectly fine with that. And she mentions it in her show that she is able to use those. But I just find I do better with a shorter needle. So I have pre-threaded these needles so you didn't have to watch me struggle to do that on camera. Let me turn this over so that you can see as a background. I use black thread here just so that you could see it. All right. So I have threaded the needle, and this is the part that is, oh, come on, all right. This is the short side where I've threaded it through the needle. I just want to secure this thread to the eye of the needle with a very tiny little slip knot. I wrap it around my left index finger, just making an X like that. And then I have this thread on the left is on top of the underneath one. I just point the needle toward myself and put it underneath the thread, underneath my finger. Easier said than done. And then I hold it straight up, and when I close it, pull it tight. See that little, there's the loop. It's basically a slip knot. I secure it there, and I pull it right up there, and it will not fall off. You have to cut it off. It is not coming off of there. So that is ideal for any of these fine threads. This is the 80 weight Quilter Select 80 weight pre-wound bobbins. You might even use it with a 60 weight, and certainly with silk or a 100 weight. It would work really well. The other thing I was seeing, I even threaded 2 needles in case I needed both of them to show you how to do this. And I didn't, I only needed the one. I would then put a small knot at the end, the opposite end, to use with the applique. So for hand applique, I'm just going to show you how I prepare it. I've started by, I traced this heart on the front side, and I trimmed it using good scissors, less than 1/4 of an inch, but wider than an 1/8. Somewhere in that little zone right there, you'll start to recognize what size you need. And then I use a mechanical pencil. This is my marker of choice whenever I can use something like this that I can see. And the first thing that I do is just finger press right at the line all the way around. And I've done this all the way around this entire thing. All the way. I've done the whole thing. Already did it. Did it yesterday. And then it's ready to place on your background. So for starters, I start by putting a pin in right there on the front side. But then because you know it's always going to get tangled up, I simply turn it over and put a different pin on the back. And now I can take the front pin out. And now it's secured. You could also use dots of glue. And if I was preparing this to take with me, I would use the dots of glue and not have to use the pins. But by having a pin on the back, it's not going to get snared up. You want to start on a piece like this that has innies and sharp points on the outside and curves. You want to start on the straightest place possible. So for me, when I'm getting started, I'm going to start right about in this area, right? I don't want to be right close to the corner, about 1/2 inch or so up from the corner. And I put the needle on the back side in my background and come up, and I just take little stitches very close together as I go all the way around. With the curves, you go slower, and you use the point of the needle. That's why it's called needle turn, using the edge, not the point so much as the edge of the needle as you get to it. You don't have to turn the whole thing over until you're ready. So I do a stitch, and then I do a little more and a little more all the way around as I go. So there are lots of great videos on how to do fine hand applique, and you will find those at any point here. I'm going to do at least 1 or 2 additional stitches right there to secure this, because I've clipped right up to but not through the pencil line. That's going to turn under here, and this side is going to turn under here, and you want to secure that point quite well. And the same thing happens down here at the bottom. I'm going to do at least one additional stitch right there at the point to hold that securely on the point. So that is some of the information I just wanted to share with you about both hand and machine applique. Let me see if I answered everything that I thought I wanted to talk about. Okay. Yeah, okay. So let's go back to the webcam again. All right. in my blog for this month, which I posted on May 31st, so that normally I post my blog on Sunday, but that would have been June 2nd, and I knew some people were going to get started, and I thought the chances were that we would have the quilt, the pattern, available for you on May 31st. So I did my blog on May 31st for June 6th, month 6, June. So I talked about, because someone asked me last month with the month 5 border, where does this border go? Is it the top, the bottom, the sides? And so I pondered that a little bit, and I looked and I said, aha, I see what the issue is. So I wrote about it on my blog, depending on which picture you use. I use the picture that's on the front of the kit. And that picture, there's one block of Jen's that's real easy to spot because it's turquoise and purple and it kind of stands out pretty much. And so on my kit picture, that was on the bottom row. It's the center, it's at the center of the bottom. So that's simply the way I went with these. When I labeled each month, of course I have all the patterns, I said this is the top row, this is the bottom row. So for me, month 6 is the top row. And I have labeled it such. When I got these all going, and where my paper? Well, these papers on here's all folded back. Yeah, top row, and it was top row upside down. But this is my top row. So now I'll be able to put it back up on the wall because the only thing I have to do now to this is start the embroidery, and I will do that so that I can have a blog for month 7 and give you some information about that. Because that's what we're going to start next month for blogs for embroidery for the next 2 borders. So that's what's coming, and it depends on which picture you were looking at. There are pictures we have on the website, and because it's a square quilt, and there is nothing that is specific, there's not like a house, last year, obviously we had houses. So the center house, if you have a center house, you don't want it standing on its chimney. You want the center house to be the way a house would normally be. But with this, it just depends on which picture you're looking at to decide on where they go. In the grand scheme of things, it doesn't matter whether month 6 is your top or your bottom or your left or your right, because you're going to do all 4 of them anyway if you're making them all. So it just was easier for me to know where they were going to go so that I could plan the colors. So that's what I did with that. But okay, I'm going to share my screen and show you some resources on our website that will be helpful for those of you like me who are fairly new to hand embroidery. So let me share my screen and go there. Okay, so here I am on our website. This is the home screen right here, and I'm logged in. We have a search box right up here at the top. Obviously, you remember to go to the forum when you're looking for answers to questions and when you're posting your progress. We love that. Then Learn, of course, is where you get the patterns for Pick a Petal and all of that. And there's classrooms there that I'll show you again. But this search box searches the whole site. So I'm just going to indicate hand embroidery, and I've already done this before. So hand embroidery, what is what comes up. And this takes you to Quiltopedia. And this is on our site. It has all kinds of quilt-related things, and it tells you what it is. So this says, what is hand embroidery? Let's click on that. And when you get here, it tells you what it is, what the benefits of hand embroidery are, some tools and supplies that are helpful for hand embroidery, what I wish I knew when I started hand embroidery. And this one says, hand embroidery can upgrade a simple mend. In addition, hand embroidery and other handwork can be very relaxing. Well, down here, I'm just scrolling down a little bit. Look at this, hand embroidery resources. These are shows on the Quilt Show that feature hand embroidery or some other things that pertain to that. How to embellish a quilt with embroidery. How to do applique with Suzanne Marshall. How to do embroidery stitches with Laura Wazalowski. She's a master at fun, whimsical hand embroidery. So go to that show. You click on it. It'll take you right there. How to handmade wool embroidery with Heidi Kaizen. I went and looked at that one. That's a good one too. So right here is a lot of things. And then here's some more. A Little Birdie told me part 1 and 9 and 8 about embroidery. See quilts with hand embroidery and shop for products that use hand embroidery. Tulip brand needles and thread magic and things that have been mentioned before. So that was easy, and you can go directly to Quiltopedia. But starting with the search box will get you going to get you where you want to go. So now I want to show you Alex's classroom because Alex loves hand embroidery and I'm going to be talking to her soon. She's in the middle of this magic garden, the Gnome's Magic Garden, that's got a lot of hand embroidery on wool. And so there's the information you could find there. So let's go to Alex's classroom. And let's go to Alex's classroom. Okay, so Alex's classroom, this is what she's working on now, the Magic Garden Gnome. They are in alphabetical order. So there are, the one I mentioned is Neutral Blooms, so let's go there. Slide on down there in alphabetical order. Neutral Blooms, okay. Neutral Blooms, and I click on Neutral Blooms, where you can do view, and then it lists the lessons. She had 10 lessons of this Neutral Blooms. Number 5 shows how Alex does, you click on the lessons here, and we know it's number 5, and it goes to each one, and then they're in lists, so you go right on down. Lesson 5, Finished Machine Applique. It shows exactly her stitching. It's a video live of her doing it, and she uses the same stitch that I do, the 1329. She's got the adjustments all made. It's very, very easy to see. Neutral Blooms, Lesson 5 will get you there, okay? Another great thing that Alex did not too awful long ago, and she is so generous with her time and everything that she's showing us how to do, again alphabetically, so just a couple of notches up from Neutral Blooms, is Make It Your Own Embroidery Stitch Along. And I'll click the view word this time, and just to show you, you can click view. Okay, this tells you about it. Make your own, view the lessons. Here they are. Okay. And then lesson 1, getting started, stitches and more. Oh, lesson 3, actually, she also features I didn't know that. I'd forgotten all about that. I had a personal exhibit at Houston in 2021, which was like a Lifetime Achievement Award, a personal thrill for me. So she's got pictures of it there, which is fabulous. The running stitch, lazy daisy stitch, more stitches, and an interview with Claudia, more stitches, more fun stitches. So you have access to a tremendous amount of information right here on our website without having to go and hunt down a lot of other resources. So I hope that you'll find that helpful, and that's a way to show you around. I always will encourage you to go to the forum. One of the funny things that I saw this week, people are starting to finish these quilts, and it's only June. So Helen W. said, Barbara's going to have to put that next category up, show your finished top here. So I think I am going to have to go ahead and get that done. So the forum, there isn't anything new on the forum. I always check to see since the last time I checked, which was a few hours ago, but the Pick a Petal, Block of the Month 2024, and then you can see these are stuck here. Month 6, show your progress. Let's just look at that for a second, and we're almost done here. Okay, this is someone who painted ladybugs on hers, which is really, really cute. And you can look at photos when you're any of these posts and look at all the great photos that are here. And you can see people are starting to get finished. That's amazing to me. This one did embroidery. The wheels on the bus go round and round. So anyway, lots and lots and lots to see. Okay, let me go back to the webcam. Okay, so almost done. Let me now look for any questions that there might be. See if anybody's here. Galena, Ohio. Hello, Galena. Nebraska. Yeah, Joanne says she made the Neutral Blooms quilt with Alex. I didn't make Neutral Blooms, but I was inspired to make a neutral quilt, which I didn't think I was ever going to want to. I'm a Brights fabric or Civil War stuff. But anyway, okay, Molly says there's been a problem on the other link. Okay. Been waiting on YouTube. All right, John gets this all set up, and there might have been a problem. If there is a problem, it does get recorded. As soon as we finish here, it almost instantly gets put back on again. If there were technical problems on the inside, I'm sorry about that. I don't know about it. Okay, so Carol says the video is not running on YouTube. Okay, and I went on to someone, Caroline said, how long have you been on Facebook? I went on Facebook right at noon, 12 o'clock noon Central Time. So it's not set up apparently. Dagmar's from Germany. Hello, Dagmar in Germany. And some people are seeing it. If you're on the Facebook site, you are seeing it. So it will get linked back up again soon. Hey, Terry, Terry's my buddy. Thank you, Terry, for the wonderful birthday card and remembering me. That was fun. Yes, Top Gun Maverick. That my two most favorite movies, Top Gun and Top Gun Maverick. So I am featuring Top Gun Maverick today. So. Okay, well, I am sorry that whatever the issue was, that it wasn't set up just right on the other end. So, but it will be there for you. Okay, now Dawn says she is watching it on YouTube. So, this technical stuff is just the thing that happens. And it's my least favorite part about doing all of these because the blood pressure goes up a little bit. The anxiety goes up a little bit just as you get ready to go. What if it isn't working? I check it the day before. So John sets it up. I check it the day before. Everything's fine. Then there's a restart on the computer because there's an update. This could be a problem. So I check it again. Everything's fine. I turn it on this morning at 10 o'clock. Let's make sure it's still working. Yep. Okay. Everything's fine. So on my end, everything looked good. But you will be able to see the entire thing. But my blog always has my blog posts. And as I mentioned, though, if you're interested in American Jane's pattern, that Oh My Stars, I am going to write about it. And that'll be up this Sunday. bbquiltmaker.blogspot.com. And you can follow me there. You can follow by email. There's lots of ways to get it, but almost every Sunday is when it comes up. So anyway, I hope that you're enjoying this. The thing about this is that the appliques now, this month coming up, July we start the embroidery. In month 8, there's more appliques and 9 for the remaining 2 borders and more embroidery. And then we start just assembling it and getting everything finished. So I do have to finish the rest of my fan blocks. All the fans are made. I have to start putting them together in doubles so that I can get those ready to go when the whole thing is done. But it's usually, for me, when I get to about this stage in the early part of June, I'm ready to have this finished because I'm already focused on next year's. And I love next year's. I'm anxious to show it to you. I think you're really going to like it. And it's much more piecing. Not very much applique at all. And in fact, you could eliminate the applique entirely if you don't want the applique. But it's going to be great, and I'm looking forward to that one too. So anyway, I hope that we get this all set up for you, and you'll shortly be able to watch the entire thing.